Respected Professor Sodargye and all dear guests present here, good morning everyone. All right, thank you all very much and a warm welcome to everyone for joining us today. This event is co-hosted by the Hainan University and the Alumni Association of China University of Political Science and Law Professor Sodargye's keynote speech. We also thank all the guests for arriving very much on time. The first item up next on our agenda is a speech delivered by the esteemed President Wang Chongmin of Hainan University. Let us all please give a warm and enthusiastic round of applause to welcome President Wang to the stage for this speech. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
First, let me make a brief correction. It's actually Vice President Wang. My apologies, I missed a word. Today is indeed a truly very special day. After a significant period of hot weather here in Hainan, today has now become quite cool. It feels as if the heavens have arranged the perfect weather just for our event today. We have been given the best temperature. This shows that humans and nature are one, and that people and the natural world coexist in harmony. At this moment, we have invited Professor Sodargye to join us at Hainan University and for the China University of Political Science and Law Alumni Association. As the co-hosts of this truly enriching cultural journey event, we are honored to deliver the very first and inaugural campus lecture of this significant series. On behalf of Hainan University and China University of Political Science and Law, I would like to extend a warm welcome to Professor Sodargye for coming here and acknowledge the effort and fatigue of his journey. We welcome his arrival and also express our respect for his hard work. When we were discussing this topic with Professor Sodargye, we chose the theme, Achieve by Doing. Of course, this topic is based on the fundamental understanding of an ordinary secular person. Later, Professor Sodargye will provide us with a much deeper and more comprehensive interpretation, exploring this topic from various crucial perspectives, including the material, the spiritual, and the practical aspects. So I believe this is truly something to look forward to. Finally, I would like to once again welcome everyone for actively participating in today's event. We would also like to extend our welcome and gratitude to Professor Sodargye for taking the time and making the effort to come here and give this lecture. Once again, welcome and thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right, we also sincerely thank Vice President Wang for delivering such a wonderful speech for us. Now we've arrived at the grand and exciting moment of our event. Next, invite our keynote speaker, Professor Sodargye, to deliver today's keynote speech, Achieve by Doing. Let's give a warm applause to welcome Professor Sodargye.
Respected Vice President Wang, good morning everyone, as well as all the esteemed teachers, students, and other guests gathered here with us today for this occasion. I am truly very happy to be here with all of you today in such a truly beautiful and inspiring campus, surrounded by so many distinguished scholars, a group of individuals who are highly knowledgeable, deeply compassionate, and truly cultured, and who possess a broad understanding, and to have the invaluable opportunity to communicate openly and learn collaboratively together. Just now, when I entered the welcoming campus, Vice President Wang graciously took me for a comprehensive tour around the beautiful Hainan University's campus. I feel that those individuals who have the opportunity to study here are indeed very fortunate. Just now, we saw the lush, vibrant mangroves, then the serene, picturesque Dongpo Lake, and the elegant, graceful egrets, as well as the overall architecture of the entire campus and the various academic colleges. At that very moment, I truly believe that studying and learning here must undoubtedly be a very joyful and enriching experience. I recall that it was just yesterday when the esteemed president mentioned that he has been here for more than 20 years. When he first arrived at this institution, there were approximately 2,000 students enrolled. In just over 20 years, the number has grown to more than 42,000, a 20-fold increase. Actually, as a teacher, one should stand at their post, continuously imparting knowledge to students. This is something that is very difficult to truly achieve. Moreover, I believe that many times, when carefully considering the significant role of a teacher on the surface, it may initially seem rather ordinary, but in reality, it is profoundly meaningful and consistently follows a certain well-defined order. I myself am considered a monastic, a dedicated spiritual practitioner, but also quite simply an ordinary teacher. From the very moment I became a monk, embracing this path until this present day, I have been an ordinary teacher, sharing knowledge and guidance. Most of the time I teach at the Buddhist Academy, and part of the time I come out to communicate with everyone. Other than that, my life is also very simple. I have no particular pursuits, nor do I have many desires. Today our topic is achieved by doing. I noticed that at your school, the prominent word doing is written very large. The words gaining that follow are not quite as big. What exactly does this signify? If we truly want to gain something meaningful, we absolutely need to do a bit more. Otherwise, you absolutely won't truly get it. Even if you do manage to get it, it might not be through the entirely correct or appropriate means. Nowadays, many young people talk a lot, have big hopes, and say a great deal. But in terms of actual action, they don't do very much. To have words but not actions is a gentleman's shame, as the ancients also said. If you only talk about things but don't actually do them in practice, that is a profound disgrace for a true and honorable gentleman. Therefore, when we thoughtfully come into this world, many diverse opportunities can be placed before us. Some of them are truly meant for us, and some are clearly not. When it comes to the remarkable people around us, the various things around us, and the numerous opportunities nearby, sometimes we should indeed strive for them, but at other times, there's absolutely no real need to be overly greedy and truly insatiable. Personally, I profoundly feel that in today's complex and ever-evolving world, it's sometimes very necessary and quite important for us to fully understand the profound benefit of achieve by doing. In actual fact, only by doing can you truly gain was just mentioned as well just a moment ago. It's actually the title of a book that I personally wrote about 2 or 3 years ago. After I had finished writing it, I genuinely didn't expect it to become a bestseller. But this book has 2 layers of meaning. One layer is for ordinary people in the world who haven't studied Buddhism. It explains one of its meanings from a cultural perspective. I think many people may have read it, or if they read it in the future, they might understand. But as the author myself, there is also a deeper Buddhist doctrine or Buddhist meaning within it. But up until today, I haven't told anyone about this. Many people also don't know what this book is really about. Some of them think that it discusses certain Buddhist principles, but they often don't fully realize that it is actually a very complete and profound system of spiritual practice within Tibetan Buddhism. This is something that probably no one knows. So today I want to briefly share this interesting information with everyone. If you're truly interested, you can certainly open it up and take a good look. My comprehensive book is divided into 8 distinct chapters. At the beginning, it talks about how only by doing can one attain, which illustrates the rarity of human being. Then it thoroughly discusses how to effectively face all forms of suffering. This significant section addresses the very fundamental nature of suffering within the cycle of samsara. It then goes on to clearly explain that all phenomena are inherently impermanent and are constantly changing and evolving. Here, it expounds on the principle of the impermanence of all phenomena. Then, in the 4th chapter, it discusses the principle of cause and effect, how cause and effect never fail. In fact, in our Stages of the Path teachings, this is called the 4 common preliminary practices. They are also known as the rarity of human being, the impermanence of life, the suffering of samsara, and karma and its effects. Later, in the 5th chapter, I talk about the inconceivable blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. This section is about taking refuge. Then the 6th chapter discusses filial piety, how Mahayana Buddhism profoundly emphasizes filial respect for one's parents, and so on. This section is about the uncommon preliminary practice of bodhicitta. Later, it talks about accumulating merit, purifying obstacles, and the practice of transference at the time of death, which is essentially end-of-life care. Actually, the meaning here, perhaps for those of you who have some understanding of Buddhism, as soon as you see this, the following sections discuss the especially important 6 uncommon preliminary practices. I haven't talked about this principle before. Maybe, just from the surface, you might not necessarily notice it either. This comes from my own research into Buddhism as the author. In other words, a book It has direct meaning, indirect meaning, and also hidden meaning. So what is the direct meaning in my book? That is to say, nowadays, when people undertake various tasks and endeavors, it's truly not enough to simply talk about it. It's truly not sufficient to merely contemplate it within your mind or to simply grasp it on a theoretical level. You absolutely must genuinely implement it into practical application through concrete and tangible actions. This is very important to keep in mind. So today what I want to share with everyone is that we can analyze this together. Many of the teachers and students present here today. In fact, when we consider and compare the current period in time to any and all previous eras that have unfolded throughout the course of human history, the garments we choose to wear are often more luxurious, considerably more expensive, and undeniably more tasteful. The delicious food we consume, when compared to any other historical era, is certainly not meager, and there are all kinds of truly delicious and wonderful dishes available. This represents a certain level of progress in terms of external material conditions. But does this truly mean that our hearts have genuinely found profound happiness as a direct result? Our overall happiness index, is it really increasing just because our material conditions are becoming more abundant and we have plenty to eat and wear? For this reason, does our sense of inner joy and happiness also keep increasing? Not necessarily. At this time, many people may feel they need so much more, especially people living in cities. I often sense this. In fact, many people often say that they are under a lot of significant pressure, don't have nearly enough time, are very busy, and feel extremely tired. There are a great many grand theories out there in the world. However, life still isn't going well for many. It remains essentially the same as it was before. Consequently, a significant number of people feel that in this contemporary era, it seems to bring them a considerable amount of unfairness. Especially for many of you university students here today, life in college is completely different from life in society. In college, there are many dreams and many life plans. There is so much passion, but when you enter the real world, in reality, some of the dreams people have in college are often very impossible to achieve. I've met many university students, and many of them think, when I graduate, I want to start my own business. Nowadays, a lot of people I meet say, when I graduate, I want to start a business and be my own boss. But how many small and medium-sized enterprises are there in China now? How many truly successful companies are there? If everyone were to become a boss and there were absolutely no employees, can such a world, such a country, such an environment truly exist? We observe so many individuals. When they first emerge, after all, you are just a recent college graduate. The knowledge you gained in university might not even be 20% applicable in modern society. Your interpersonal communication skills are also relatively weak, and your social experience may not be very rich or extensive. The knowledge that you have learned is really just something that is used during your academic studies. But in the real world, it might not necessarily be entirely relevant. At this particular point, many people's dreams in their hearts are very likely to turn into nothing but illusions. Therefore, when first starting out, for many students, my hope is that they should strive to be ordinary, simple, down-to-earth, and diligent people. To start accomplishing things one by one, step by step. When we consume food, we absolutely have to swallow each individual bite, one at a time. It's truly impossible to take just one single bite and instantly become fat. When we walk, we have to take it one step at a time. It's impossible to take one step and immediately reach the sky or leap across the world. That's just not possible. Whatever we do, we also need to take it one step at a time, accomplishing things slowly, one by one. Only then can we achieve some measure of success. In fact, a lot of so-called success theories nowadays just inflate our desires. They only talk about the outcome without mentioning the causes and conditions behind it. All success, whether thoughtfully analyzed from a Buddhist perspective or from a worldly perspective, requires a long process. During this process, a great deal of accumulation over time is needed. Gradually accumulate a lot of experience and accumulate a lot of wisdom, accumulate a lot of skills as well. Only then can you achieve success. So today I really want to Today is pretty good. You all have water to drink. Sometimes, when I see other places, only the leaders in the front row have drinks, and those in the back do not. Just now, I noticed that not every spot here necessarily has enough, but basically, everyone here has access to clean, fresh water to drink. This is something very unique indeed about Hainan University. Many other places don't have this, it's more equal here. Even though it's just a bottle of water, if everyone can genuinely share in this, it truly feels much more comfortable and inherently fair to all involved. If only the leaders or only those in the front row get to drink and others don't, that's not so good either, in all honesty. So I am especially and truly grateful for that. Today, we're going to discuss the incredibly insightful concept of achieve by doing. Personally, I truly believe that this principle holds immense importance in our lives. No matter who you are or what your background may be, if you genuinely want to achieve or acquire something significant, you really have to take decisive action. Personally, I possess this particular trait. I am not a particularly wise person, nor am I especially capable in many areas. However, when I thoroughly evaluate myself, as long as I make a promise, as long as I set an intention, as long as it's something I want to do, no matter how big the difficulty I encounter, I always grit my teeth and push through. And this isn't just about having a burst of enthusiasm at the beginning. At first, I might be very excited, telling myself, I must do it, I have to do it. But after a certain while, if my initial passion gradually fades away, I tend to lose all interest in what I'm doing halfway through. Or for things I'm involved in, I just push them onto others. I might say, you guys do it, I simply don't have the time. But I don't seem to be like that. When I carefully evaluate myself, I truly feel that as long as I've made a promise, as long as I've firmly made up my mind about something, once I've clearly and unequivocally stated my position in front of others, then for the entire rest of my life, I will earnestly and sincerely remember my original intention and always remember the profound motivation I had at the very beginning. I've always diligently put this important principle into practice. Whether it's making a vow to become a translator in my life, or giving lectures, or running some schools, these are all just small, insignificant things, really nothing worth mentioning. You could also say they count as good deeds. But as long as it's something that I truly want to do, I will absolutely put my utmost effort into every single thing. Of course, with anything in life, it's truly impossible for there to be no significant obstacles from the very start to the very finish. It genuinely seems like such perfect things just simply don't exist. No mountain road can ever be completely straight. There will always be some twists and many turns. In life, whatever it is that we truly set out to do, there will be many obstacles and adverse conditions, both expected and unexpected, that arise along the way. But sometimes when we encounter these obstacles, it may seem like it's all up to us to handle them. We may feel that our willpower isn't strong enough, that our own strength isn't sufficient. I once came across some information that originated from abroad, and this is what it conveyed. There was a particular time within a large company when an official notice was disseminated to every employee. This notice stated that on the following day, everyone was expected to proceed to a location to pay their solemn respects because an individual had passed away. The person who had been a source of considerable obstruction to them died, and everyone needs to go and pay their final respects to him. When everyone arrived at the funeral home, there was a coffin present. When the coffin was opened, there was a long mirror inside. In fact, the mirror reflected yourself, meaning to say that the person who truly hinders our career is ourselves. It's quite witty. So maybe during the process of doing things, we think it's others who are creating obstacles for us, making it impossible for us to continue. But perhaps it's actually because of your own reasons. For example, whether you find yourself navigating the social environment of a school or the professional landscape of a workplace, it might seem like nearly everyone around you is actively working against you, deliberately creating difficulties and challenges for you. The leaders aren't nice to you, and neither are your colleagues. But it's very likely that it's because of your own personal behavior. Maybe you're especially lazy in this particular situation. If you don't take all of your important work seriously and diligently, then it's impossible for everyone to just let you get away with it for nothing. So sometimes when we can't keep going forward in the process of doing things, perhaps we need to reflect on ourselves. It's possible that you yourself have become the primary obstacle to getting things done. When we do things, any kind of work, actually, there are several categories. The first category is some people do things, but they're not doing good things. They're doing bad things. Nowadays, many young people, whether they are still in school or have already entered society, aren't really willing to do good deeds or real work, and instead end up doing a lot of bad things. I've seen this myself when I visit some cities and see many young people. Nowadays, drug use and drug dealing are also very serious. Once you get addicted, it creates a chemical reaction in your nervous system. In the end, they can't help themselves. Sometimes they even end up. Some people sell their blood, some sell their family property, and some try all sorts of ways. There are also people who are addicted to gambling. Some individuals get involved in other illegal or disorderly activities within society. Actually, even though these people are doing these things, what they're doing is completely unreasonable and utterly illogical. It goes against their inner conscience and against the natural, harmonious order between humans and nature. I once saw someone who was preparing to bribe a government official. This official was known for his honesty and refused to accept it. It was around midnight when he brought 10 caddies of gold to him. But the official said, "I won't take it. This isn't right at all." The man replied, "It's fine, just accept it. It's the middle of the night. No one will ever know." Then the official said, "You know, I know, heaven knows, and earth knows." Actually, what he said was true. Sometimes when we do things that are improper, unreasonable, or unjust, maybe no one knows right now, but your own conscience does. We often say, 3 feet above your head, the gods are always watching. There are also certain universal rules you simply can't get around. That's why many people would rather live a very ordinary life. They'd rather live in poverty, or even as a wanderer. But no matter what, never do anything that harms society or your family, or even harms yourself. Such things must never be done. If you do such things, you may end up reaping only profound pain. What you eventually get will be bitter fruit. Therefore, we must absolutely never do such things. Nowadays, some young people genuinely think, whatever I choose to do is absolutely none of your business. I am free, and I'm about my individuality. But actually, talking about individuality, it's not something that just any student or young person can claim. They haven't reached that level yet. If you really want to talk about individuality, generally speaking, it's the domain of successful professionals. Or to put it another way, it is only when you have enough life experience and worldly wisdom, when you have reached a certain level, then you can talk about your own individuality, your own taste, your own interests. That's really acceptable. But right now, whether it's your family, your personal life, or your professional work, if you haven't established the basics yet, you graduated from college, individuality, I actually think that's a bit too soon. So what we really should do is simply not do any bad things. Otherwise, what you get may not be a really good outcome. If you end up in prison or your family falls apart, if your reputation and your health are completely ruined, then at that point, even if you regret it, it's already too late. So in our lives, it is essential that we first and foremost properly position ourselves. Set a correct direction. This is extremely important. Otherwise, young people nowadays, many people end up going along with the crowd or the blind, leading the blind. It's very possible to rely on other bad people who slowly lead you into especially frightening and dangerous areas. This is something you absolutely must pay very close attention to. These days, things are indeed very chaotic, as everyone should be aware. Sometimes, without warning, we might fall into a terrifying abyss. At that point, you might bring an amount of trouble and distress to your family members and close friends. When I visit prisons, I find that some of the people inside are actually very smart and wise. But these people are almost too clever for their own good. Because they used their intelligence in a completely wrong way, they ultimately ended up spending their entire lives behind bars. They have absolutely no chance at ever achieving freedom, and they are deeply saddened, filled with immense regret, but there is absolutely nothing they can do about it now. This is also a crucial, important reflection we should consider when we are still young. It is very, very important indeed. Some people, whether it's matters at home or at their workplace, or even from Buddhist perspective when it comes to spiritual practice, they simply don't want to do anything at all. Every single day they just muddle through life, feeling quite confused and utterly aimless. There are indeed people who simply don't want to do anything at all, every single day in their lives. Actually, that's not good either. As a person, being bored, useless, and completely uninteresting is also a profoundly unfortunate situation. Individuals should accomplish something meaningful and significant. If you possess nothing substantial and drift aimlessly through life every single day, then in actual fact, such a person should be considered extraordinarily unsuccessful in this world. Some people really don't want to do anything at all, and it's impossible for them to achieve very good results. There are also others who probably want to do meaningful things, but in reality, they don't actually take a single concrete action whatsoever. As Lenin once said, giants in thought, dwarfs in action. That is to say, their minds are very active. They want to do this and that. But when it comes to actually taking action, even if you ask them to do just a little bit, they are extremely fragile, as if they are incapable of accomplishing anything at all. I often encounter people just like this. Some people, when they first start talking, they are very logical and coherent in every single sentence they utter, and they're also particularly eloquent and articulate. But in the crucial process of selecting individuals for leadership positions, just looking at mere eloquence isn't nearly enough. Sometimes now, when I carefully select staff members for my team, I often find myself thinking, he's indeed very articulate, and his insightful ideas are quite good and well-reasoned. He has a lot of thoughts and ideals. But will the various things he thinks about actually be put into practical application? That's also incredibly difficult to achieve. When he's thinking, everything sounds absolutely great, and he writes extremely well too. But when it comes to actually doing it, perhaps he lacks long-term commitment, or maybe he doesn't put in the necessary effort and is very much slack. Maybe at a certain point he just withers away. Situations like this do happen. There are also some people who want to do things in their hearts and say they will do them out loud, but it's just talk, and they never actually follow through. There was once a Japanese writer who wrote a book called Reform of Action. In it, he analyzes 9 types of people who only talk but don't act. For example, some people don't do many things at all in their lives. And what's the reason for not doing them? They make excuses. They say, I wanted to do this, but I didn't have the money, so there was really nothing I could do. I wanted to do this, but I didn't have the time, so there was actually nothing I could truly do. I wanted to do this, but the leader didn't allow it, so I didn't do it either. At that specific time, I guess I didn't think it through carefully enough. Later, the conditions weren't right, so I didn't do it. Or, when I reflect on myself regarding this matter, I feel that my age isn't right, my wisdom isn't enough, my experience is lacking, and my circumstances in all aspects aren't suitable. So for now, I don't want to do it. At first, there might have been some promises, but in the end, those promises were not fulfilled. This is also a very bad thing. In Buddhism, there is a very famous scholar named Nagarjuna, and he once said, a wise person's promise is like words carved in stone. No matter how much wind or rain it endures, it will never be erased or destroyed. The promise you made at the beginning will always exist. I think this is something many people should remember. No matter what kind of practice you are doing, any promise, commitment, or vow you made at the very beginning should be fully and completely fulfilled in the end. If you truly have a profound and enduring tradition of wisdom, a deep wellspring of knowledge and insight, it might even be meaningfully passed down through many generations and across numerous lifetimes. There's something I'm quite curious about. Let me share it here today. In New York, USA, there's a river known as the Hudson River, and right next to the Hudson River, there is a child's grave from over 200 years ago, a young 5-year-old child. This 5-year-old child was named Pollock. At that tragic time, he accidentally fell into the river and sadly died. After his death, his grieving parents lovingly built a small grave for him. It should have been as early as July 15th in the year 1797. Later, whenever the parents saw their child's grave, they felt uneasy in their hearts. They missed their beloved child deeply with each passing day, and eventually, with heavy hearts, they decided to sell their land to someone else. Subsequently, their entire family left and moved far away to a new, distant place. However, when they sold the land to other parties, there was a very specific agreement The agreement stated, "No matter what happens in the future, our child's grave must never be destroyed." 100 years later, the 18th President of the United States, Grant, after General Grant passed away, the US government took his grave. They chose a spot less than 100 meters away from the grave of that 5-year-old child, right next to it. By the time they chose that location, 100 years had already passed. In fact, the ownership of that place had indeed changed hands a great number of times throughout its long existence, but the child's small grave still remained there. Later, when the US government built the president's tomb there, and when the memorial hall was constructed at that site, America did very well in this regard. They did not destroy the child's grave. It was always built just about 100 meters away from him. Grant's memorial was placed right there, and another 100 years passed. Grant passed away in 1897, exactly 100 years later. Then another 100 years went by. By that time, the small child's grave had already been there for a remarkable 200 years, and President Grant's significant grave had been present for a full 100 years. At that crucial point, the esteemed mayor of New York City personally had the 5-year-old child's grave meticulously restored once again. Then, at the memorial ceremony, he retold the story of this child. I had seen this photo before. The child's grave is very small, surrounded by an iron fence. General Grant's grave is much larger, not far away. When I went to New York last year, I was curious and really wanted to see it for myself, because this was a solemn promise that had been made between their respective families at the very beginning. But this promise has been consistently kept ever since. Not only did the property over the years change hands many times, but the fundamental promise never truly changed. Even when the government chose to place the president's tomb there, it still didn't change. If this discovery had been made somewhere else, it is very likely that the child's grave, after another 10 or 8 years, would have been sold to someone else. Let alone when the National President's Memorial was built there at the time, it's very likely that an ordinary person's grave wouldn't have remained together with it. It could have been demolished. But in reality, this kind of promise has lasted for over 200 years, more than 200 years, and it still exists today. Sometimes we can also reflect on this. Such promises between people are not just simple promises. It's very important to actually fulfill them when the time comes. The ancients often said this: a wise person's promise when they come into this world remains even when they leave this world. The promises of those without wisdom are like ripples on water. After making a promise, you forget it, and so do others. So, when we judge a person in this world, we look at whether they can fulfill their initial promises through their subsequent actions. This is an exceptionally crucial and fundamental thing. If you truly can't do it, no matter how eloquently and persuasively you speak, in practical reality, it's merely theoretical. We often say, instead of calling them intellectuals, we call them know-it-alls. There are many things that people clearly know, but in actual practice, they don't really do them. There once was a captain who specialized in sailing at sea. He was especially good at talking, but he couldn't row a boat himself. All of his explanations, including what to do when encountering a whirlpool and how to steer the boat when facing other obstacles, he could explain all of it very well. Later, when the captain on the boat eventually died from a serious illness, they asked that person who was so good at talking to row the boat. But all he could do was talk, and as he talked, he ended up drowning in the water. Sometimes Buddhism also talks about practice, but just talking about practice isn't enough in reality. There's a huge difference between practicing in words and actually practicing. Nowadays, among Buddhists, perhaps many of you university students are not aware of this. Within the Buddhist community today, there are some people who often use certain Chan teachings and frequently cite profound principles from Vajrayana when they start to speak. It seems as if this person has already attained enlightenment, as if their spiritual level is very high. But in reality, when it comes to their actions, they can't even do basic good deeds. Once during the Tang dynasty, the poet Bai Juyi sought the guidance of Chan Master Daolin, famously known as the Bird's Nest. At that time, Bai Juyi was indeed a very famous literary figure. He asked, "What is the Buddhism?" Chan Master Daolin told him, "Do no evil and practice all good." Bai Juyi then looked down upon this Chan Master. He said, "I'm very disappointed. Even a 3-year-old child understands such a principle." You are such a renowned Dharma master, and yet the so-called Buddhist teaching is just do no evil, practice all good. If the teachings are reduced to such catchphrases, how shameful and meaningless is that? At that time, he was being sarcastic towards him. Then Chan Master Daolin replied to him, yes, when it comes to saying it, even a 3-year-old child can understand. But when it comes to actually putting it into practice, even an 80-year-old man finds it difficult. Actually, our spiritual practice is the same. Some people can talk about it, and when they talk, they can expound upon many profound and significant principles. But in reality, these principles are completely disconnected from their own hearts and cannot be integrated into their lives. So sometimes in this world, we need to continuously accumulate and settle ourselves. Especially for many of you who are gathered here today, you should also take some time to reflect on this matter. In your future lives, everyone inherently desires to become stronger, to grow bigger, and to achieve significantly more. It seems that many young people whom I've met in recent years are all full of passion and genuinely want to achieve something truly significant. I want to make a lot of money, I want to change the world, and also I want to benefit humanity. Everyone deep down harbors these grand and significant ambitions within their hearts. Actually, I think such ideals are very good. But some people seem quite indifferent, often even becoming a burden to their own parents. Unlike those, there are some young people who are indeed different from before. Their mindset should include having positive aspirations and ambitious goals. But sometimes just shouting a simple slogan doesn't mean all the opportunities will come to you. Sometimes I pay close attention to these highly successful people in the world. Actually, it's not because I want to follow them to make money myself. It's not like that. But I wonder, how is it that some people are so successful in this world? Why is it that in just a few decades, in just 20 years, they become the wealthiest in the world? Nowadays, we truly live in a society that places great emphasis on measuring a person's success by their wealth. It's a quite unique era. In this special era, I look at them and wonder how they became successful. Actually, behind each of them, for example, those you are more familiar with, like Alibaba or Tencent, and many other large corporations, including Wanda Group. Once, I read about the remarkable experience of its CEO. At the very beginning, he had nowhere to borrow money from. He went through a great deal, fighting over 200 difficult lawsuits and experiencing many hardships. I realized that these people are actually very strong-willed. We might only see their current success that they've already made money and have more than they could ever spend. Not only can they not spend it all in this lifetime, but even in the next, it wouldn't be enough. And even in the lifetime after that, if they had the chance, they still couldn't spend it all. At times like this, many young people often feel envious in their hearts, wondering when they'll become just like him. But in reality, looking behind the scenes, they started out as ordinary employees. At some point, they also dedicated themselves to seriously learning a particular skill. At the same time, whenever they encountered any setbacks or difficulties, they persevered. They had to get through them with resilience. At such difficult times, some people just can't face the challenges and end up giving up. But some individuals continue working and eventually achieve significant success. Of course, when it comes to this kind of emergence and success, I have no doubt that there is also a very special and intricate karmic connection to creating good deeds involved. As a dedicated Buddhist scholar, I don't just simply believe that success comes from knowledge or effort alone. There may also be some invisible, intangible, special causes and conditions at play. Otherwise, if two people are developing something together, nowadays, so-called development means to develop, to become prosperous, and to get rich. There's also this way of saying it. Two people start a business together. Two people start working on something, but later on, they each encounter different causes and conditions. So when many young people are choosing chance, sometimes it's not necessary for you to be the boss. Many of the most successful people in the world today are not bosses themselves. But within a certain company or within a large corporation, if you start your own business, including your finances, your capabilities, and your personal connections, you might not necessarily achieve what you have today. But because you chose the right team and found the right leader, as a result, your life today is completely different from that of some others. So, in Buddhism, this is what we call a kind of cause and condition. These causes and conditions can be good or bad, but when it comes to good causes and conditions, we also need to strive for them. Of course, here, as I have previously mentioned, in achieve by doing, each of us is doing something, but what exactly do we gain? In fact, what we truly gain are different kinds of results. Some people act for their own personal benefit or for the benefit of their families. Now, I observe many people striving and working hard, but in reality, it's for their own families, at most for their own children. If we expand the scope a little, it's for their siblings, their children, and their future descendants. However, if we consider this on an even broader and more encompassing scale, it becomes clear that very few individuals engage in such expansive thinking. In reality, if we are genuinely wise and highly capable people, it's not merely about securing an opportunity for your own personal happiness. What's even more important is what you do. If your actions can bring happiness to countless people, then that is indeed the most successful way of doing things, the most successful way of gaining something. No matter what your actions are, for example, if you are a teacher and you teach your students every single day, thereby allowing many individuals to bathe in the ocean of wisdom, and in the end, when your students are everywhere, you have truly achieved by doing. If you are an entrepreneur and you wholeheartedly take responsibility for your employees and your clients, helping them with unwavering dedication, and in the end, when everyone in the entire world praises you with heartfelt words written across the sky, written on our grasslands, and etched in each and every one of our hearts, then you should also feel a sense of success as an individual. This is what it means to be an entrepreneur. If you are a civil servant or a leader, and you always act with fairness and complete integrity in all your actions, and you conduct yourself in a reasonable and lawful manner, striving diligently, then in the process of your hard work, everything you are involved in will be fully protected by the law and upheld by justice. After this, indeed, it is very, very meaningful to live in this world, especially for many of us who are in the process of achieving success. We must not forget our traditional culture. Once, I saw something at a lecture at Guangdong University of Foreign Studies, a lecture titled Writers in Times of Adversity. At this event, there was a Nobel Prize in Literature winner from the year 2008, whose name is Leclésio. He was 73 years old. What did he say? He said that so-called success is something each and every one of us should earnestly strive for, but the very best philosophy of success can be found in the ancient and revered writings of Laozi and Confucius in China. He further stated that the writings of Confucius and Laozi are models for successful people. As a Nobel Prize winner, from his perspective, in fact, many people's ideas about success nowadays are similar. At the time, many people asked him, for example, "Are you familiar with many of today's novels, including novels by Mo Yan, Han Han, and Guo Jingming? Have you read them?" What was his answer? He said, "I haven't read the works of young people yet, but I will in the future." I think he was just being polite. He probably won't read them in the future. He said, "I like reading the novels of Lao She and Lu Xun." However, his view is that these so-called success studies all originate from our traditional culture and Confucian thought. This significant understanding is something everyone should truly be aware of. In the future, we should conscientiously strive to genuinely be good and virtuous people ourselves. What kind of good person? That, of course, depends on the specific circumstances. Maybe it's someone who is helpful to their family, or perhaps someone who is supportive and beneficial to the employees and all the people around them. Or maybe it's someone who can help countless individuals, all sentient beings, anyone and everyone they can possibly assist. All of this depends on our intention and motivation. But this intention can't just be empty official talk from us. This is very important. There's also the book Looking Toward the 21st Century. You might have read it too. It's a dialogue between Dr. Arnold Toynbee and Daisaku Ikeda. It was a very meaningful conversation that took place in the 1970s. This book mainly discusses the sources of life. It covers crucial topics such as environmental protection, complex political systems, and national economies. It also includes essential healthcare and public sanitation. And it talks about the significant role that China will play in the world in the future, among other important things. There is some truly in-depth and insightful analysis on many aspects. Actually, the two of them, one is a devout Buddhist and the other is a committed Christian, but both of them graduated from Oxford and other universities. They are truly outstanding scientists. They compared and discussed scientific thought and religious thought. They analyzed our future in the 21st century. At that time, they articulated to effectively solve the social problems of humanity in the 21st century. Only Confucianism and Mahayana Buddhism can provide solutions. Why did the two of them say this? This is something that many young people today might also find worth pondering. They are not only scientists, but also mentors who possess a very direct understanding of our contemporary society. As both a mentor and a scientist, what is his view of the world? Whether it's the 21st or the 22nd century, when it comes to solving humanity's social problems. In fact, the Confucian ideas of Confucius and Mencius are also extremely important. When it comes to personal conduct, the teachings of Confucius and Mencius are very important. But if you only study Confucian thought, is that enough? It really isn't. We also need to benefit others. Relying solely on Confucian thought is not sufficient. It is a form of individualism, and in terms of self-interest, it is quite good. But if we are too selfish, I'm afraid that won't work either. Now, in this era of globalization, we need to cultivate the altruistic bodhicitta, the altruistic mind, as taught in Mahayana Buddhism. Only with an altruistic mind can we create a truly beautiful home for our entire world. This is very important. Therefore, we also sincerely hope that whenever you find yourselves with available time, you should study your scientific knowledge and your cultural knowledge. At the same time, perhaps what is even more important is to pay attention to our inner world. The inner world is also extremely important in our lives. If I am not happy inside, no matter how learned I am or how much wealth I have, perhaps the life I lead will still be just so still. I might even develop depression, autism, and so on. It's quite possible indeed. Therefore, in today's truly complex and very busy society, a world that is bustling, sometimes turning inward and finding inner peace is also very important. Finally, I would like to simply conclude today's lecture with a Zen koan. It is said that in the distant past, an individual once posed a question to a truly remarkable Chan master. Which day in a person's entire life is truly the most important? He asked the Zen master. The wise Zen master replied, today is the most important day. He said, if today is so important, then does that mean something truly earth-shattering is happening today? The Zen master said no, and the person continued to ask. Then, if you say today is important, is it because my visit is important? Actually, that's not the case either. It has nothing to do with anyone's visit or anything else that happens. But today is still very important. Why exactly is that? Because the past, you see, is much like a grand ship that has completely sunk to the very bottom of the deep, dark sea. It has already irrevocably sunk to the seabed and is now entirely gone. Many brilliant and wonderful things in the future haven't actually happened yet, so they're not that important really. What matters more is our life in the present moment and the thoughts we have right now. This is important for everyone. You also know that in the Chinese character for thought, the top part is today and the bottom part is heart. In other words, the heart you have in this present moment is very important. If it is used to make a vow for good, if you follow through with good actions yourself, then in the end, you will definitely achieve your dreams. In Mahayana Buddhism, we talk about the aspiration for bodhicitta and the practice of bodhicitta. Aspiration means making a vow, and practice means putting it into action. Achieved by doing. Thank you all.